but there is no way we as humans actually really comprehend the implications of this. The implications of that are so profound and so enormous that we humans are not even prepared to understand what this new world means that we're entering right now. So how do you deal with this? How do you deal with this? I'm going to be preparing you for dealing with this situation here. But there are a few more things I've got to talk to you about before you can understand the solutions. And we're going to open this up to Q&A so you guys can ask me more questions, because by the time I get to the end, you will have more questions than answers. And I will be here for as long as possible to answer as many of those questions. Now, right now, here are some of the ways that technology is changing our lives. Right now, we know that automation is changing the workforce. A lot of people are losing jobs because of automation. That is occurring right now. You guys may know some people who have lost jobs to automation. Pretty soon we're going to have self-driving cars on the streets. We have them out there already, but we're not at a point where they're as common as they will be. Pretty soon, you're going to be driving to work in a car without actually driving the car yourself. We are very, very close to having that technology rolled out to everyone. Now, how do you think that's going to affect Uber drivers and Grab drivers? Think about that. How do you think that's going to affect the people that are transporting goods around Thailand right now? Do you think that those jobs are going to be affected by that? Absolutely, they will. Right now, McDonald's has just announced that they are going to be releasing a fully automated McDonald's in Tokyo. That is happening. People that have fast food jobs are at risk now. They will not be able to have a fast food job. Why? Because automation is going to make those jobs obsolete. We talked about people driving trucks. That's going to be automated as well. And get this, pretty soon we're going to have drones delivering stuff to your door. Right now, we're already working on that in the United States. Amazon is already prototyping delivery of Amazon goods to people's doorsteps with drone technology. Do you think any jobs are going to be affected by that? And here's another technology that's going to change everything. You've probably heard of 5G. Probably heard of 5G. You have to understand, when we made the shift from 3G to 4G, that was a massive paradigm shift. These phones that we all carry around with us, these were all kind of worthless when they were 3G. We could send text messages, we could make phone calls, but we couldn't watch videos. We couldn't really use the internet very effectively. But when we went over to 4G, suddenly now we can watch a full movie on your phone and you can stream it. 5G is going to be as radical a shift, but here's what it means, what a lot of people don't understand. It doesn't just mean that you're going to be able to download stuff faster on your phone. What it means is that the entire nature of your existence is going to change. You see, 5G is a very, very dense sort of a wave. Okay, you've got to have many, many 5G sensors all over the world for 5G to roll out effectively. So right now, an Uber or a Grab, you pull up your phone and then you type in where you want to go. When 5G comes out and it's fully realized, there will be sensors everywhere. You won't even have to carry this phone. The sensor will see your face, it will recognize your voice, and you will say, I need an Uber. And there will be a voice in the sensor that will tell you, your Uber will arrive in 3 minutes. That is right around the corner. We already have 5G towers going up in Thailand. 5G is about to be rolled out all over the world. This is the implication of 5G. Here's another technology that's going to change everything. Quantum computing. Quantum computing. Just 2 years ago, Google passed what is known as the quantum supremacy test. That means that we are very close to being able to use quantum computing in a practical application. Now, I won't get into what quantum computing is all about. Basically, it's the difference between a 1 and a 0. And we have these things called qubits, where they have 8 different states in which a bit can exist. But the implication for you is this. A quantum computer will be able to do in minutes what will take the fastest supercomputers in the world right now 1 million years. Let that sink in. When quantum computers roll out, a quantum computer could perform in a matter of minutes what would take the current fastest computers in the world 1 million years to perform. One of the implications of this is that cryptography may be obsolete, because the quantum computer will be able to break any cryptography. And that means that the blockchain as we know it is also at risk because of quantum computing. Now, because we know that everything is growing in this exponential curve, how soon do you think this stuff is going to roll out? Everything is changing very, very rapidly right now. These changes can be here very, very soon. And when they happen, the very nature of your existence is going to change. But everything that we've talked about so far is going to be a fundamental shift for your existence. Your existence as a human is going to change in thousands of ways that we don't even know yet. That's the implication of what is going on in the world right now. Here's another way the world is changing. We have this phenomenon called nanomaterials, the nanomaterial revolution. The nanomaterial revolution. The implication of the nanomaterial revolution is this. You've seen the periodic table before, periodic table of elements. It describes all of the different chemicals that we know and understand. The quantum material revolution has discovered that underneath the periodic table, there's an entirely new periodic table. And behind that, there's another periodic table. And behind that, there's another one, and another one, and another one. This means that there are substances out there that we have not yet even discovered, and they're right under our nose. We're just now learning how to discover these. And one of these discoveries that we made was something called graphene. It's the simplest thing in the world. All it is carbon. But it's carbon that is one atomic layer thick. So when you have carbon that is one atomic layer thick, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is this. It behaves in an entirely different way from carbon. It turns out that this substance called graphene is 100 times stronger than steel. It's 1/10 the weight of steel. It can be a superconductor of electricity, and it's totally flexible. Very soon, this is what the cell phones that you're buying are going to look like, because we already have graphene-enabled devices in the world right now, and we're starting to roll these out faster and faster and faster. There are bikes out there that people are making with graphene that are stronger than steel bikes, but are extremely light because of graphene. They're now talking about creating graphene biometric tattoos that you will put on your skin, and it will be a biometric sensor noticing everything going on in your body. This kind of technological shift is right around the corner. Now, again, this is just carbon. What's carbon? Carbon is pencil lead. Okay? They discovered this new material in pencil lead. And this new material is everywhere. Okay? This is the implication of the nanomaterial revolution. Everything that you look at in the physical world right now, there are hidden layers inside the physical world where there are secrets waiting to be unlocked. Graphene is not the only nanomaterial that we have discovered. We've discovered several now, and we're discovering more and more and more every day. Every single one of these represents a paradigm shift for you as a human being. Now, here's one other simple way to look at this. If everything is changing exponentially, you are here. You are right at the curve where things are about to start changing very, very quickly. Now, here's what I want you to grasp. We're getting to a point where every day a paradigm shift is occurring in one particular area of human endeavor or another. Now, most of you probably don't even know about graphene, but it's been out there for 20 years. It's been out there for 20 years, but nobody's even talking about it. Why? Well, we can go into many, many reasons as to why it's not being discussed. But one of the really important reasons is that there are so many changes occurring that it's impossible for journalism to keep up with all of the change. Now, one of the implications here is that you're going to start a business And then as we're entering this new world, you may wake up one day to discover that the business that you built is no longer relevant because technology has rendered it obsolete. And it can happen that quickly. It can happen in a matter of days. This is the era that we are entering, people. I want you to understand this. What we have understood about how humans exist, everything that you've learned about that is no longer going to be relevant. When people talk about COVID creating the new normal, they don't have any idea of what the real new normal is really all about. The real new normal is far more profound than everybody just having to be on lockdown because of a virus. Now, I want to tell you one other thing that's possibly going to scare you a little bit. And again, I don't want to scare you with this information. I want to prepare you. Okay, being fearful about these things is not going to help you. However, being prepared and being realistic about it, that's how you're going to survive this. Now, I want to make you aware of something really profound. In the United States, we have 3D printable automatic weapons right now. 3D printable automatic weapons. I want you to think about that. You can buy a 3D printer from for about $100 US, about 3,000 baht. Okay? You could buy a 3D printer, and you could, if you were so inclined, print a 3D automatic weapon. So in the United States, we're talking about gun control right now, and it's a ludicrous conversation. Because if you could 3D print an automatic weapon, there is no more gun control. You can just print any weapon you want. Now, if you remember this diagram here, where it says you are here, how long is it going to take before we go from 3D printable automatic weapons to 3D printable weapons of mass destruction? If we have 3D printable weapons of mass destruction, how will the world be different? You think that the world will be different? I think profoundly different. I think we are that close to having 3D printable weapons of mass destruction. Now, again, in the United States, we have politicians out there that say, we propose a bill to make 3D printed weapons illegal. And to that I say, that's ludicrous. It's completely ludicrous. Why? Because we passed similar laws to prevent the piracy of digital content. Probably half of you downloaded songs or movies illegally within the last couple days. Okay? That's how ludicrous that kind of approach is. We're not going to be able to use law to prevent the world from blowing up. We have to do different things. Now, to make this really real for you, just a few years ago, President Maduro of Venezuela, there was an assassination attempt on him using a commercial drone purchased over the internet. A commercial drone purchased over the internet. And they attempted to assassinate President Maduro with a commercial drone purchased over the internet. Now, they were not successful, but they were that close. Maduro's bodyguards were able to deploy what are known as ballistic shields quickly enough to protect him. But the implication here is this. An assassination attempt on a major head of state was pulled off using a drone that was purchased over the internet. That is how volatile the world is right now. Now, let's bring this all a little bit down to earth. Let's talk about ways that this can be understood practically for you. It's what I call the three constants of the new economy. The three constants of the new economy. The first one is the pace of change is increasing exponentially. I think you understand that by now. It's not just changing rapidly, it's changing exponentially. Number two, trends can be overturned in a nanosecond. Black swan events are happening almost daily now. And what is a black swan event? If you are raising swans, all the swans will be white. But every now and then, birth to a black swan will be given. It's an extremely rare event, a black swan. So we use black swan as a metaphor to talk about something that changes everything. So everything that we've talked about so far, the nanomaterial revolution, 5G technology, 3D printable weapons, Every single one of these things, these are all black swan events. And guess what? We're having black swan events now every single day. Let that sink in. Number three, the only real foundational constant of successful companies has been an emphasis on two things: culture and systems. Culture and systems. If you base your business on technology that could be rendered obsolete overnight, you don't have a very stable business. But if your business is pivotable, your business can... Now let me tell you a story of a business that pivoted. YouTube was not always a video sharing service. YouTube started out as a dating website. Most of you probably didn't know that. Let that sink in for a second. YouTube started out as a dating website, but they failed as a dating website. So what did they do? Well, most businesses, when you discover that your model has failed, what you say is, well, what I'm going to do is start over from scratch. I'm going to throw that business out, I'm going to fire all the employees, and I'm going to start over from scratch. A pivot is very different. Instead of starting over, what you say is, you say, well, we have a culture. What is culture, by the way? Culture is the people in your business and the values that they all share. That's your culture, okay? And the systems are the things that you do on a regular basis that you can systemize as a process. Now, YouTube said, hey, we have a really good team that we built. We have some very good systems in place. And in fact, we also built some really great video technology, some video streaming technology. So we're not going to shut down. We're going to pivot. We're going to take everything that we built so far, and instead of being a dating site, we're going to be a video sharing service. And the rest is history. I want you to understand, if you pivot correctly, you can take a failing business and pivot into a new business model and do extremely well. Understand that. YouTube was about to fail, but through an intelligent use of pivoting, they turned into one of the greatest success stories in the history of mankind. That is how I want you to be prepared as a business owner. Now, I also want to get you ready with something that I call the 3 essential hedges. The 3 essential hedges. These are the things that you need to understand to survive in this coming world. It's impossible to be ready for all of the uncertainty that we're about to experience. But there are things that you can do to prepare yourself and make yourself more likely to succeed. Now, before I tell you what the 3 essential hedges are, and I'm going to tell you these briefly, and then we're going to go into Q&A, okay? I want you to understand this. The 3 essential hedges are essential for a reason. You have to have all 3 in place. I'm telling you right now, there's one thing that you can understand walking away from this presentation. Some of the technological stuff may have been a little bit confusing and a little bit too much to understand, but what I want you to understand is this. You have to have all 3 of the 3 essential hedges in place. This is not a negotiable thing. You have to have these 3 things in place to survive in this new world. And if you don't have all 3, it's like having a broken wheel. You can see the car on the top there. It only has 1 of the hedges. It doesn't have a proper wheel. The next car down has 2 of the hedges. It's not a wheel. You've got to have all 3 in place. If you look down at the bottom, you can see only then can the car move. It is not enough to have just 1 or 2 of these. You've got to have all 3. Really, please let that sink in, because your survival, your family's survival is dependent on this. So what are these 3 essential hedges? The first hedge that you've got to understand is that the only assets that matter are your skills, your knowledge, and your health. The only assets that matter are your skills, your knowledge, and your health. Now, why do I say that? Because let's say you have a whole bunch of money in the bank. Well, currency can be rendered obsolete. Ask anybody who lived through the Weimar, who went through the Cuban Revolution. who live in Venezuela that we were talking about here recently. All of these different cases were cases of rapid inflation, okay, or currencies being totally devalued. Currencies being totally devalued. If your currency can be devalued, the things that can never be taken away from you are skills, knowledge, and health. Skills, knowledge, and health. Now you might think, well, Mark, what if I just own a whole bunch of hard assets like real estate or gold? Well, every government in the world has a rule that allows them to seize the assets of all of the people in their country. Every country in the world has these rules. If a government wanted to, it could seize all of your assets. So you're protecting yourself by owning hard assets. Yes, it is a way to hedge against uncertainty, but it's tenuous. It can all be taken away. The only assets that matter are skills, knowledge, and health. They can take away all of your money. They can take away all of your hard assets. But if you have skills, knowledge, and health, you can rebuild. And you're going to need to rebuild over and over and over again in the future. As the pace of technological change increases, you're going to have to build over and over and over again. You're just going to have to be prepared for that. Now, a lot of people, when COVID happened, they were like, oh my God, this is a big traumatic experience for me. I'm going to have to change my life because of COVID rules. If that was too much for you, you're going to have a very, very difficult time in the future. Why? Because similarly profound changes are going to be occurring in the world on a regular basis. This is why you've got to protect and nurture your skills, your knowledge, and your health, as if your life depended on it, because it does. Now, the next hedge is something that I call your lifeboat business. Now, we've actually already talked about this. A lifeboat business is a business that is built on systems and culture. Systems and culture. A lifeboat business will survive because the emphasis has been on systems and culture. A business that is not built on systems and culture cannot survive in the future because it will be based on things that will change too rapidly. If the pace of technological change is going to be rapid and constant, your systems and culture are the only two things that will remain relevant. So you've got to turn your business, you've got to convert your business into what I call a lifeboat business. Now, the third hedge is known as big tech marketing independence. Big tech marketing independence. Why? Because right now, if you're advertising on Facebook or Google or YouTube or any of these major platforms, you've got to understand that these platforms can take away all of your traffic in a heartbeat. Now, I can poll the audience here and see how many experience this. But when I go into presentations full of rooms of digital marketers, and I ask these digital marketers, who here has ever had a Facebook account shut down? Or had a Facebook ad account shut down? Or has had an ad disapproved? Or has had a Google ad account shut down, or a YouTube ad account done through Google shut down? Who here has experienced that? If I ask people in a room to stand up, usually about half the room stands up. That's how often it happens to people. You've got to understand that big tech is now trying to control all of the information that is being shared in the world right now. There are people that are being de-platformed on these major platforms. So you can go in and think, hey, my future is secure because I know how to advertise on Facebook. And then you tell your family, hey, guess what? Let's buy a new house. Let's buy a car. You tell your kids, hey, don't worry about paying for college. I've got it all covered because I know how to advertise on Facebook now. And then you wake up one morning and Facebook says, guess what? We shut your ad account down. Facebook does this to people all the time, by the way. Happens every day. So you've got to be independent of big tech marketing. If you're reliant upon big tech to market your products and services, you are in serious trouble, because they can, it's like to a blood supply, and they can cut the blood off instantly. That's what big tech marketing is, independence is implying for you. You have to make sure that you can survive as a business without relying upon big tech to get out there. And I will guarantee you, probably 90% of you right now are reliant upon big tech. And it's a very serious problem, because big tech could shut you down instantly. You've got to be 100% independent of big tech. 100% independent. Now, that is all I want to share with you guys today. I want to share one last thing, and we're going to open this up for Q&A. I hope you have a lot of questions. What I want to tell you is, if you want to learn how to do everything that we just talked about, the 3 essential hedges, what it takes to become independent of big tech, by the way. You want to learn how to build a lifeboat business. If you want to learn how to develop your skills, knowledge, and health very rapidly, then I want you guys to watch a free webinar that I put together called The Single Most Profitable Secret in History. It's a free webinar for you guys. You guys can go to simpleology.com/USP and secure your seat there. Now, I implore all of you guys to watch this webinar. That webinar will go in far deeper than we talked about. And it's a lot easier to understand than what we just talked about as well. Okay, because it's going to be a little bit longer. It's going to be a bit easier to understand all this. But I implore all of you guys to watch that presentation, because your survival in business is going to depend on how well you can do those 3 things that we talked about. Employ those 3 essential hedges. All right, I will leave that there for you guys to write down, and we can open this up now to Q&A.
คุณมาร์คเขาให้พวกเราสามารถถามคำถามได้นะสุดยอดมากใครได้เรียนรู้เยอะอยู่บ้างครับพิมพ์ว่าเยอะนะครับหรือพิมพ์ว่า good ภาษาอังกฤษอะไรก็ได้นะครับให้คุณมาร์คเขาเข้ามาหน่อยเดี๋ยวผมจะช่วย facilitate นะครับเพื่อถามคำถามเมื่อกี้เห็นมีคำถามเริ่มทยอยเข้ามาแล้วนะครับของโค้ชชาร์ปทีมงานบอกไว้ด้วยนะครับ
I like some of these reactions. These are good.
Yeah. So they got a lot out of you, Mark. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah. And there's a lot of questions coming. Let's see what the question there. มีคำถามพิมพ์มานะครับพิมพ์คำถามมาได้เลยครับเมื่อกี้มีคำถามOkay. I have one from คุณหนิงนะครับ Mark. How can we survive without relying on the big tech?
Okay. So that webinar that I told you guys about, we'll get into much deeper detail about this. The single most profitable secret in history is all about one particular marketing technique that you guys will learn. In fact, it's the same marketing technique that is responsible for the biggest fortunes in the history of the world. Okay, so we'll get far deeper into that in that particular one. But let me give you guys a few different things that you can do right now. So some of you guys are aware that I was Russell Brunson's first mentor, and one of the things that I taught Russell early on was some of the same things that I'm sharing with you now. And Russell was doing something known as Google AdSense. Now what that means is you create content on the web, and then you put this AdSense code on there, and this AdSense code will deliver ads. Now a lot of people were making a lot of money with Google AdSense back in the early days. When Russell came to me, he said, hey, I'm making a lot of money with Google AdSense. I told him, I said, you are now, but probably in the not too distant future, they're going to cut you off. You're going to lose that money. You're going to lose that revenue stream. And Russell said, really? It doesn't make sense. that why would they cut me off? And I would say, well, technology is constantly evolving and changing, and platforms change their rules all the time. They're probably going to change a rule, and the way you're making money now is no longer going to be relevant. So what I want you to do is I want you to start building your email list. Your email list is something they cannot take away from you. They can cut you off from ads, but your email list is something that they can never take away. And Russell said, well, I don't understand it, but I'll start doing it. He started building an email list. And then a year later, he wrote me and he said, hey, have you heard what's going on in Google? All of the Google AdSense accounts are getting deplatformed, and we're not able to make money anymore. He said, thank God I did what you told me. Thank God I built an email list, because everybody else that I'm talking to is in trouble now. All of these other people are suddenly wondering where they're going to get their money, because Google AdSense was no longer working. Russell didn't have that problem. You have an email list, you can always eat. You have an email list, you can always eat. And an email list is going to be independent of big tech platforms. It's very different from having a Facebook group or having a Facebook ad account or having Google ads, anything like that. That's all controlled by big tech. You've got to have something where the locus of control is controlled by you, not by big tech. So email is the fundamental first, most important thing that you need to start focusing on. Okay, we can go into that in much greater detail, but again, that the webinar will give you much deeper information about that. We have a next question.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. เขาบอกว่าเดี๋ยวเราเข้าไปดูหลายๆคำถามนะอย่างคำถามเมื่อกี้มันจะมีลึกลงไปในเว็บไซต์ที่เมื่อกี้คุณมาร์คให้ไว้นะครับเราสามารถเข้าไปดูตรงนั้นจะเจาะลึกใน3หัวข้อนะครับไม่ว่าจะเป็นเรื่องคำถามเมื่อกี้นะครับเรื่องไลฟ์โบ๊ทนะครับ System Culture อะไรก็ตามนะครับไปดูในนั้นนะคุณมาร์คเขาเตรียมมาให้เราเพิ่มเติมเพราะเวลาวันนี้มันน้อยมากๆนะครับอันนี้เดี๋ยวเรามาคำถามข้อถัดไปที่คุณมาร์คเขาอยากโอเคเมื่อกี้มีคำถามมาบอกว่า how can we choose Mark how can we choose the right information because we are right now in the world of overloaded information how can we choose the right information
Yeah, it's a profoundly important question as well. So right now you cannot be certain of any of the information that is being presented to you. Now, I used to work in the military intelligence community, and part of military intelligence is the deliberate use of what we know as disinformation. Okay, it is something that in the military intelligence community we do deliberately, on purpose. We create wrong information and disseminate it out to people so that the enemy will not be as combat effective. Here's the problem. Governments all around the world are not only disseminating wrong information in other countries, they're also disseminating it to their own people. Now, I won't name any countries, all right, but I think everybody knows that governments around the world are engaged in this practice. How do they do it? Well, they control media. All right, I'll give you one very clear example of governments controlling media. So when Iran in the 1970s, they had a democratically elected leader by the name of Mohammad Mossadegh. Now, Iran has a lot of oil, but a British company known as British Petroleum was managing all of the oil. Now, Mohammad Mossadegh, the leader of Iran at the time, said, hey, that's not a good deal. I want to nationalize our oil production and control our oil industry ourselves. So Great Britain didn't like that because they knew that they wouldn't have control over Iran's oil anymore. So what did they do? They said, hey, let's talk to the United States and see if we should go to war with Iran. The United States said, you know what, we're really not interested in a war, but we don't want you to lose the oil either. So what we're going to do is we're going to send in the CIA. We sent in a man by the name of Kermit Roosevelt, grandson of FDR. What did Kermit Roosevelt do? He bribed reporters to put false stories in the news about Mohammad Mossadegh and to say that he was a socialist. And then they paid fake protesters to start protesting Mossadegh in the street. And these bribed reporters were reporting on these fake protests. So the Iranian citizens got the impression that, hey, Mossadegh is a socialist and everybody in the country seems to be against him. But it wasn't true. We created the illusion that it was true. Now what happened? We installed somebody by the name of the Shah of Iran. The Shah of Iran was the next leader. And that set the stage for the Islamic Revolution. Now, that's one example of many that I can share with you. What I can tell you is that the intelligence operations that are going on right now, of course, are not discussed publicly, but let's just leave it to your imagination. Do you think that governments are still involved in affecting the news around the world? I think it's pretty obvious, right? I mean, don't you know that the news that you turn on and watch is usually propaganda, right? Most of us think that it's real, but it's not, but the vast majority of it. And again, I'm not going to point out any specific examples right now of what's going on right now, but what I can tell you is that this is a phenomenon occurring all over the world. So how do you get the right information? It's almost impossible to get the right information as to what's going on around the world. So what you've got to do is you've got to now narrow your focus on the things that you can know. What you can know is what's going on in your neighborhood, what's going on in your family, what's going on in your business. What kind of information can be reliable that's going to affect your industry? Now that's a little higher and a little harder to figure out, but that's the key to all of this, is narrowing your individual focus so that you don't get misinformed by all of the propaganda out there. And that propaganda, I want to tell you, it's not just governments that are involved in this propaganda, okay? It's interest groups, it's, there are intelligence agencies, there are political parties, it's happening everywhere. Businesses are doing it. Businesses are actively involved in paying for disinformation campaigns in the world right now. So we all have to be aware of that phenomenon and thus narrow and shift our focus on the things that we can know for sure.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So are they called economic hitmen? Is there a lot going on?
Well, so that is a phenomenon that occurs. You're probably referring to the Carl Perkins book, Economic hitmen are real. They exist. However, it's not the only danger that we face. That's one part of many, many things going on.
All right, thank you. And yeah, very good. Wow, that's huge. And there's another big question here, very in trend now. What is your opinion on cryptocurrency now and in the future? Very in trend now and in the future. Mute, Mark. Oh, we can hear you. You unmuted. We can hear you. You unmuted. Yeah. Can you unmute? Yeah. Can you unmute? No. I can't.
Now I can. Okay. Now yeah. Sorry.
Oh, there's some topic that's very serious, huh?
Yeah. That was
okay,
it.
Cool.
That was it. Yeah, I was censored. All right. So cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency could be one of the most important things going on right now. I'll talk about the plus and the negative side of cryptocurrency. Okay, the positive side of cryptocurrency is first and foremost that the blockchain is something that will allow transparency of transactions. Now, the transparency of transactions allows for many things. There are people now talking about using blockchain to create forms of open governance so that we can run the government through blockchain so that everything will be transparent and visible. Now, why is that important? Because the corruption of the world governments is one of the biggest barriers to advancement of humanity. So blockchain could potentially unravel a lot of the underpinnings of the tools that big governments use to control people. And it will do that by, decentralizing the financial community. You guys have probably heard of the term DeFi, decentralized finance. It's one of the implications of blockchain. Another really great implication of blockchain is privacy. Right now, if you wanted to make a transaction with blockchain, you can do it in a way that nobody in the world could see. They can, because the blockchain is open, we can see that a transaction, but we don't necessarily have the ability to tie it to you. Now, by the way, you don't have that privacy if you used one of the cryptocurrency exchanges out there. If you're registered with one of those cryptocurrency exchanges, you've lost all of your privacy. So if you want the privacy benefits of cryptocurrency, you need to use, a local type of wallet. Okay, you need to use something like cold storage or something like that. Here's the problem with blockchain that most people don't talk about. We talked earlier about quantum computing. One of the implications of quantum computing is that all cryptography could be corrupted with quantum computing. Now, if you were to read what is known as the Satoshi white paper, this is the white paper that invented the blockchain, that invented cryptocurrency. It says right there in the abstract of the white paper that as long as a majority of the nodes on the network are disseminating the right information, the blockchain will remain valid. But here's the problem. A quantum computer is so radically more powerful than current existing computers that if one entity gets one quantum computer, they could, if they were so inclined, create virtual machines on the quantum computer and take over the blockchain instantly. So until we have a battle-tested, quantum-resistant cryptocurrency is always going to be at the threat of being taken over by somebody that has an asymmetric advantage in computing power. And that asymmetric advantage could occur very, very, very rapidly, as we talked about in the beginning of this. So that is why I would advise people not to go all in on crypto, but to see it as one of many, many different ways that you can diversify your asset holdings.
Wow. Thank you. Wow. ใครรู้สึกว่าการได้ตอบคำถามได้ถามคำถามและตอบคำถามจากคุณมาร์คดีบ้างครับพิมพ์มาหน่อยสุดยอดนะครับในซูมเนาะแล้วก็ทางใน Facebook หรือกลุ่มต่างๆที่ไม่มีโอกาสตรงนี้นะแต่อย่างน้อยพิมพ์โต้ตอบแล้วก็พิมพ์คำถามมาด้วยนะบางทีทีมงานเขาอาจจะเห็นคำถามแล้วก็อาจจะเลือกขึ้นมาตอบก็ได้นะพิมพ์คำถามมาด้วยนะสุดยอดเลยขอบคุณครับแล้วโอเค so there's another question here like what's your thought on centralized versus decentralized and related to war? Any thought on that?
Yeah. So actually, when you guys sign up for the webinar, one of the first things that you'll see there is you'll get an opportunity to download the book, Your Roadmap to Money in the 20s. And I get into that specific question very, very specifically. And in much greater detail. And by the way, I recommend all of you guys to not only watch that webinar, but to read the book as well. Because that book is going to prepare you and deepen your understanding of all of these ideas. And it's a very easy read. There's lots of pictures. I made these very complex ideas very, very simple and easy to understand. All right. Now, the war between centralization and decentralization is one of the most fundamentally important questions that we have to answer as a species, right? So let's talk about the benefits of the centralization of power. When you centralize power, it means that you can make very, very quick, rapid decisions. Okay? It means that you don't have to deal with bureaucracy and debate. This is why in the United States, we have, three branches of government. We have the president, the executive branch, we have, Congress, and then we have the judicial branch. And those three branches of government are supposed to be arguing with each other all the time. That's why we structured it that way. We wanted it to be inefficient. However, we knew that at times of war, we wanted leaders to be able to make very quick decisions. Because you can't say, hey, the enemy is on the way, let's all talk about it, right? You don't have time to talk about it. So what do? We have what are known as the War Powers Act. And the War Powers Act gives the president the ability to act as a dictator in a short period of time. So we're centralizing the power in one position in the president's hand so that he can make rapid decisions. Because during times of war, you need to be able to make rapid decisions. Now, another way that centralization can be a benefit is that let's imagine that we have people who live in countries that don't have a good quality of life. We're all fortunate here. I live in Thailand as well, right? And I'm in Phuket right now. We're all here in Thailand because we love Thailand, right? Thailand is a good place to live. If it weren't a good place to live, I wouldn't be here, right? Now, let's compare that to North Korea. North Korea, obviously not such a great place to live right now. If all of the power in the world were centralized, it would be harder for a dictator, like we have in North Korea, to make things hard on people. If the centralized power was benevolent. So let's now talk about some of the negative sides of centralization. Okay, the negative sides are that you've heard the term, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Centralization of power is absolute power. Centralization of power is absolute power. So the potential for corruption is a lot higher. And the consequences of bad decisions are a lot more dire. I'll give you another example in the United States. It's called the United States for a reason. We have 50 states. And each of those 50 states is intended to be governed, in and of itself. So we allow each state to manage itself so that we can experiment with different forms of governance in the world. And if we all can experiment with different forms of governance, then we have an opportunity to learn new ways of doing things. But we have a central government in the United States as well called the federal government. Now, the federal government comes in from time to time and says, hey, all of the states now have to do this. Now, if what the central government tells us to do is good, then centralization is good. But if the central government tells us to do something that's bad and they require everyone to do it, then failure is not just a minor failure, it becomes a catastrophic failure. Failure is no longer localized, it is globalized. And this is why I think that we need to be pushing for the decentralization of power as much as possible. Because even though centralization can prevent a lot of problems, the potential perils of centralization of power are so great that we must fight against it.
So, do you see 1984 happening?
1984? It's happening. It's happening right now.
Okay.
So, there's a combination. So another book similar to 1984 was called Brave New World. We're seeing a lot of what you see in 1984 and Brave New World occurring right now before our eyes. So right now, I'm talking to you guys through a webcam, right? I've got a wonderful 4K web camera here. When we all have webcams built into our phones, built into our computers, they're all over the place. They're in our screens, on our TVs. It's exactly what 1984 was preparing us for. So, but instead of the government saying you have to have these screens in your house that see your every move, we are voluntarily bringing all of these cameras, all of these sensors into our homes. So who's to say that we're not already in 1984? Because everything that you do is being observed. Even when you think things are off, sometimes sensors are gathering information. And they say that we're protected from that, but how can we know that? How can we guarantee that the people who have access to all of our information are not abusing that access? And we know for a fact that certain people are abusing that access because we have caught people in big tech spying on people through their webcams. We have caught big tech companies doing this. We have caught governments doing this. So maybe we're already in 1984.
Wow, that's huge. Wow. And I think we have few more minutes. So any other question? คำถามอะไรเพิ่มเติมมาอีกนะครับ แล้วอย่างที่บอกคุณมาร์คเขามาให้จริงๆให้เป็นของขวัญมีทั้งฟรีเว็บมินานะครับแล้วก็มีฟรีหนังสือด้วยนะครับอยู่ในนั้นนะครับสามารถทักได้แล้วก็ไปคุยกันนะครับในลิงก์นะครับจะได้ไม่ต้องมาพิมพ์ตรงนี้หลายๆรอบนะครับทีมส่งไปเรียบร้อยแล้วนะครับมีเป็นของฟรีให้หมดเลยนะคุณมาร์คให้เป็นของขวัญจริงๆอยากช่วยเหลืออยากให้พวกเราได้มากจริงๆในช่วงวิกฤตแบบนี้มองให้เป็นโอกาสนะครับใครมีคำถามเพิ่มเติมนะครับพิมพ์เข้ามาครับพิมพ์เข้ามาอยากให้ใช้เวลาตรงนี้แบบให้มันแบบอินไซต์มากๆบ้างขั้นไม่ว่าจะในมุมมองของคุณมาร์คเองนะครับคนที่เขาเคยยืนอยู่นะครับแต่เขามองเห็นอนาคตมากๆนะครับใครเห็นด้วยบ้างว่าสุดยอดมากๆพิมพ์กันเข้ามาหน่อยแล้วก็ขอคำถามเข้ามาด้วยมีโอกาสนะพิมพ์คำถามSo another question, Mark. In the future, how about the stock market? Is that still existing, the stock market in the future?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the stock market will probably still survive, but it will probably morph into different things. I mean, right now, we have all sorts of sophisticated, exotic ways that people can invest their money. Now, some of these are better ideas than others, right? What I predict, what will probably happen is we'll start to see exchange of different types of assets. So, for example, right now we have this new thing called NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and we're starting to see people trade these non-fungible tokens. We're going to start to see stranger and more exotic types of asset classes being traded on these exchanges. And we might see completely different types of exchanges coming up as well. Now, what I would tell people is to not be too dependent on the stock market, because the stock market is something external to you, and you're giving up all of your power and you're giving it to an external force. If you have a lifeboat business, like I'm going to be teaching you how to build on that webinar, well, now you've got something that you control. You've got something that you control. So again, we talked about asset classes that are dangerous. The stock market is one of the most dangerous asset classes out there. Now, if you do it intelligently, and you've got it where it's diversified across different asset classes and across different jurisdictions, it's safer. But I wouldn't depend on it, because we can't guarantee that the stock markets will not completely implode overnight. There are a lot of people who have woken up to find that their retirement funds that they have put completely in the stock market were wiped out by some of the market corrections that have occurred in the past. So what I would tell people is to, again, be very, very cautious of that.
Thank you, Mark. There's another question here. Dangerous asset class.
Say again.
What are the dangerous asset class?
Well, what I would say is that all assets are dangerous, right? Everything except for the three that we talked about, right? The only assets that matter: skills, knowledge, and health. Maybe that's clicking a little better for everybody now that you hear the talk about all the different asset classes. Now you understand why it's so important to invest in your skills, to invest in your knowledge, to invest in your health. Absolutely essential. We're in a period of time right now where a lot of people out there neglect their own bodies because they believe that something external to them is going to save them. And that's a very, very dangerous way to live. So instead of investing in asset classes, invest in yourself.
Wow, thank you, Mark. งั้นตอบคำถามเนาะอันนี้ there's another question related to lifeboat. Like we talk about lifeboat, and I know that's in the webinar in the book, right? But they said how they can apply the lifeboat in the regular people, like.
Yeah, good question. So you mean non-business owners, right? Okay. So person who doesn't want to be a business owner, what you've got to do is you need to associate yourself with, work for a company that is a lifeboat business, because lifeboat businesses are going to need teams. So you need to find a company, a group of people who understand these ideas and have committed themselves to do that, and go work for them. Let me give you a great example of a company that's doing that very well. Ultimate Success Partners is doing exactly that, and I know that for a fact. Why? When I met, and I'm gonna embarrass Romy a little bit. Okay, when I met Romy was a big guy. Okay, Romy was a big guy, and he and I talked about this. I was like, hey man, we had a conversation about these same things, and I've been encouraging him over time. Now look at Romy. In the course of this last year, Romy has transformed his body because he understands that skills, knowledge, and health are the things that matter. Okay, so we have to associate ourselves with companies like Ultimate Success Partners that are taking these ideas seriously.
Wow. Thank. That's good. Yeah, Romy is right here.
Good. Hopefully I didn't embarrass him too bad.
Thank you. ได้เรียนรู้เยอะอยู่บ้างครับ พิมพ์เข้ามาหน่อยสุดยอดนะครับ เพราะฉะนั้น I think it's about the right time. I think we could have more time with you, but to finish it up, do you have any last words for us?
Yeah, all I would say is just, take these ideas very seriously. I would hope that what has occurred over the last year has made it very, very clear to people that the world as it was before is over. Okay? And it's not just about COVID. COVID is nothing compared to this larger landscape that we're talking about here. And I would just implore people to wake up. Because if you don't, you're going to have a rude awakening thrust upon you. And I don't want to see that happen to anybody here.
Okay, wow. Thank you so much, Mark. It is an honor for you to be here and sharing some insights and, Thank you so much, Mark. And looking forward to see you again in webinar or the next seminar or in Phuket.
Yeah, in Phuket. There we go. Thank you guys. Khap kun khap. It's an honor to be here.
ทุกคนนะครับตบมือดังๆให้คุณมาร์คหน่อยแล้วก็พิมพ์กันเข้ามาหน่อยครับพิมพ์กันเข้ามาหน่อยนะครับพิมพ์ขอบคุณคุณมาร์คพิมพ์ว่าได้เรียนรู้อะไรนะครับโอเค